Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman, and this is a special request one, guys. Somebody asked me if I could make them a Khajiit Necromancer. And before I get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay casual type build. This is not meant for meta play. Now, moving on. The idea behind this character is they're a Defiled Warlock, is what they're called. And basically they use a mixture of magic and stamina in their playstyle, and they basically defile the undead and use defiled undead to cause damage on their enemies, but also doing negative effects to help aid their allies. It's a really kind of interesting mix of how this works, but it's a really cool setup. So let's go ahead and get started taking a look at what we are. We are the Defiled Warlock Necromancer. This is a Khajiit character. We do have 64 points into stamina. Please do not stress that it is low. You actually get quite a bit out of it. We do have 21k magicka on the magicka side. Now, if you want to play this as a tank, I will tell you this, it can play a tank. It's not a super effective tank, but it can play tank if you get the Lady Mundus Stone and you take half your points here, more than half, and put them into here, and go to 20 or 30k magicka, or health. If you can go to 30k health, you can effectively play this character in tank form. And you can tank most dungeons. I wouldn't say all dungeons on normal and veteran, but you can tank basically all the base game dungeons on normal and veteran. The DLC dungeons, I would probably say play this as a damage dealer, like it's set up for right now. Now, the thing you have to understand also is if you want to play this as a healer, you have to take all 64 points and put it into magicka. Alright, any race can play this. Khajiit is not the best option. Actually, Dark Elf is, but Khajiit works. And we have 21k magicka, 24k health, 28k max stamina. We do have an 1129 mag recovery with a 425 health recovery and a 706 stamina recovery. Moving on, we have a 2002 weapon damage with a 38% weapon critical. We do not have our Mundus Stone for some reason. I thought I picked it, but maybe I didn't. We're supposed to have the Thief Mundus Stone to boost our critical rating. So now that we have that, as you can see, we go to 48% weapon critical with a 2039 spell damage with a 39% spell critical. We do have 13,000 spell resistance, 12,000 physical resist. This is a light armor build, by the way. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone, and we are using Tri-Stat Food. Tri-Stat Food is going to be the best option for this because you are hybridized. That means you are a hybrid type build. You use both magicka and stamina, so you want to take advantage of both sides. Alright, now moving on to our gear. So for potions, Tri-Stats are for what's used for tanking. When you're playing support, you're going to use, or healer, you're going to use the spell power pots. When you're playing damage dealer, you're going to use stamina power pots. And you'll see why in a minute. Alright, so primary food, Tri-Stat Food, Longfin Pasty, and Melon Sauce is what I use. You can use Dubious Cameron Throne if you want to, if you're going to focus more on the stamina and not so much on magicka. The other thing is Witch Mother's Potent Brew for when you play healer. When you play healer with this, you will want to use this. Alright, now going over the gear sets. Now this is an unusual one for a light armor build to use, I know. But I chose Thorvikins because I want, the thing you have to understand about warlocks, witches, and things like that is they don't use magic to be nice, if you will. They use magic to bring negative against their allies. So they use a lot of negative effect on their enemies, sorry. And then they also do things to help aid their allies. They're kind of like a mix between a damage dealer and support character in one. So that's why I picked Thorvikins for this, because one, it gives you max health, which really helps. And then when you take damage from a nearby enemy, you summon a growing pool of desecrated bile for 8 seconds. Enemies in the vial take X amount of disease damage every second and are afflicted with minor maim and minor defile for 4 seconds, reducing their damage done and their health recovery by 15%. So, or their healing received in health recovery. So the nice thing about this is it does give you that negative effect kind of play. Now, the next set, and I'm just going to go over the sets real quick. The next set we're using is one that a lot of people will probably should have guessed, but we are using the Night Mother's Curse, or Gaze. And the Night Mother's Gaze we use because it gives us weapon critical, weapon damage, weapon critical. The 5-piece, when you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. Now, I do use the spell Unnerving Boneyard, which does major breach and major fracture, but the reason I use this set is because I'm not always using Unnerving Boneyard. There's times where I swap out Unnerving Boneyard for Mystic Orbs, so I can throw orbs instead to give resources to my allies and to also apply damage. This allows me to keep that major fracture side up for my allies. And I also have major breach too, besides the Unnerving Boneyard. So the next set we're using, and this is an unusual one because a lot of people probably were like, why would you use this? But we're using Way of Martial Knowledge. Now, Martial Knowledge set is a kind of unusual set because it drops in Kraglor. Not a lot of people use this set, but it gives you max magicka on the 2-piece, the 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece spell damage, and then when you deal damage, you may cause, or you cause the enemy to take 10% additional damage from your next attack. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds, when you deal damage of any kind, you will do 10% on your next attack. It doesn't matter what it is. Whether it's an ability, a light attack, a heavy attack, it will get 10% increase in damage. And if it's a spell, stamina, magicka, it doesn't matter. Alright, so I like that set for that combination, especially when you're playing like a hybridized type character like this. Now, going over the enchants and traits on the gear, on the helm, pretty much everything but the chest is going to be divines. And there's a reason for this. Our primary role is going to be damage. So we want to boost our Mundus Stone effect to its highest potential with the way we have this set up. So we use divines on most of our stuff to give us that higher Mundus Stone effect. We do have tri-stats on the helm, chest, and legs. And as you can see, everything is divines except for the chest piece. It is reinforced. Now I have tri-stats, like I said, on the helm, chest, and legs. This is so we can maximize our resource pools when we're playing any kind of role, whether we're playing a tank, a healer, or damage dealer. Now, going over these smaller pieces. The shoulders and belt, we have a max magicka. This is to maximize our magicka resource. And then on our gloves, we do have max stamina to maximize our stamina resource. So we have this extra magicka stamina, and it's not much, but it's enough that it carries a lot more with it. Moving on to the rings, we are running 2 trirune rings, one with a weapon damage enchant and one with a spell damage enchant. And then the necklace we have infused with magic recovery. That's why our mag recovery is 1,129. This main reason why we have such a high mag recovery is for when we play tank, when we play healer, and even when we play damage dealer. We want to be able to keep our magic resources coming in effectively. Stamina resources we can get back with synergies and everything else. So, alright, now going over the 2 weapons on the main bar. We have a sharpened Way of the Martial Knowledge dagger with a mag recovery enchant. I did it again. I did this like so many times today. So we want a foulness or a disease damage enchant, and then we want a absorb stamina enchant on the front bar. On the back bar, you're going to want a weapon spell damage. Sorry, I got a little caught up with some things today while I was working on this. I can't believe I just did that too. But while I was working on this and had to take care of some real life stuff like going and dealing with some errands I had to run. Alright, let's do this again. So, sharpen, disease damage main hand, offhand, Nirnhone, absorb stamina. This way, with absorb stamina. This way you have an easier way of managing your stamina resource while dealing damage. But you also have this, which will give you increased spell and physical penetration for all your attacks on the front bar. And then the disease damage is really nice. Moving on to this, we do have an Inferno Staff. This is what the person asked for. It's infused with a weapon spell damage enchant. This will maximize both your weapon, physical, and magicka damage output. Alright, now that I've shown you guys that stuff, we're going to go on to the skills. And starting with the class skills. I do take every active ability and ultimate in the class skill line. For this particular setup, though, go with the Glacial Colossus and Skeletal Arcanist. And then the rest of them, stamina, besides the Unnerving Boneyard. On Bone Tyrant, we take all the Magicka morphs. And the last ability, we want to get Empowering Grasp. Living Death, we take all the active abilities. Now, moving on to Weapon. Active and passives, okay? Make sure you get all your passives. Now, moving on to weapons. Dual Wield is what we use primarily on the front bar, so we take advantage of all the active, ultimate, and passive abilities. As you can see, we use a Dual Wield attack with Thrive in Chaos. That's our primary attack skills for the dagger. And then we use 2 stamina abilities and 2 magicka abilities. On the Destruction Staff, we take all the passives, actives, and ultimate ability just in case we need them. Now, armor, we are a light armor build. We do take advantage of all the light armor passives and active ability. And then on medium armor, we take the top 2 and the bottom 1. And on heavy armor, we take the top 3. The reason we do this is so we can take advantage of all aspects of our character, because we do wear 1 heavy, 1 light, and then 1 medium. And on the way this character is set up is you wear a heavy chest, reinforced, medium legs, divines, all the other pieces, light, divines. Now, I know I'm going to get asked this. If we don't have this monster set, what's another good thing to put in here? A Lombris. That is another good set to put in here. It'll also give you extra max magicka, and anytime you deal shock damage or fire damage, your character will proc extra lightning or fire damage on the enemy. That's why we keep the Skeletal Arcanist, which does shock damage, and the Wall of Elements. We're moving on to world skills. We do take the ultimate, active ability, and passives for soul magic if you want to. I like to take the last 2 at least. Guild skills, Fighter's Guild, we take the ultimate and all the active abilities plus the passives. This way we can take advantage of those for different situations. Same thing with Mage's Guild. Same thing with Psijic Order and the passives. And then Undaunted, all the active abilities and the passives. For Alliance War skills, I take the ones that I use mainly in PvE because I don't play a lot of PvP with my characters. I do on occasion, so I'm not too worried about these abilities because I mostly play Battlegrounds. So, Warhorn, Vigor, Caltrops, and then support, Replenishing Barrier, Cleanse, and Mystic Guard. Now, moving on to the racial, we are a Khajiit because this is what the person asked for. Like I said, again, any race will work. With the Khajiit, though, you do get the Robustness, which gives you the health, stamina, and magic recovery. And then Lunar Blessing, which increases max health, magic, and stamina by 825. And then Feline Ambush. Increase your critical damage and critical healing by 10%. And it decreases the detection radius of your character in stealth by 3%. Alchemy. Medicinal use is really good. When using a potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. This is primarily used when you're doing dungeons. And then Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. Both of these are really important types of passives because the Gourmand, Connoisseur give you increased 20 minutes to your food and drinks. And then the Alchemy increases the effectiveness of your potions, primarily for when you're playing in dungeons again. Now we're going to go over the skills we have on our bar. Starting with the first ability, we have Rapid Strikes. Now this is really powerful. It does X amount of damage over 5 consecutive hits, and then each hit, the damage is increased by 3% in subsequent So every, like, the first hit doesn't get the 3%. It's the second, third, fourth, fifth, and they go up 3, 6, 9, 12. So you guys get the idea. It gets more powerful. And then the final hit deals 300% more damage. The next ability we use is called Venom Skull. And this one, you lob a poison damage skull at the enemy, dealing X amount of damage. Every third cast deals 20% more damage, and then while slotted, casting any Necromancer ability while you're in combat will count towards the third cast. Next ability we have is Unnerving Boneyard. Now this does apply Major Breach and Major Fracture, but please understand I don't use this all the time. I only use this for damage purposes when I'm playing a damage, like primarily damage dealer, so we can get that high frost damage output over 10 seconds, along with that Major Breach and Major Fracture, and people can, it can consume a corpse on cast and deal 20% more damage, which we don't take advantage of too often. An ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber Synergy, dealing X amount of frost damage to nearby enemies, and healing you for the damage done. And then our next ability is Blighted Blast Bones. Summon a decaying skeleton from the ground. After 2.5 seconds, the skeleton runs after the target and explodes, dealing X amount of disease damage to all enemies nearby, and applying Major Defile to them, reducing their healing and health recovery by 30% for 4 seconds. This plays really well with your monster set and the Minor Defile. Next one we have is called Hungry Scythe. Now this does magic damage when you activate it, and it hits in a cone and a 7-meter radius in front of you. So it's actually got a really far reach. The first enemy hit will heal you for X amount of health, and then each additional enemy hit will heal you for extra health, X amount of health, and then up to 5 enemies. So, and then after dealing damage, you get a tick heal every second for 5 seconds. And the heal does scale off your max health. The last ability we have is our ultimate, and we have Thrive in Chaos. This does X amount of damage over 8 seconds and healing you for 55% of the damage done. Each enemy hit increases the damage done by 5% for the duration, up to a maximum of 30% more damage done. Now moving on to the back bar, this is where we have our Destruction Staff. And back here, we have our Skeletal Arcanist, which does X amount of damage when summoned, lasts 16 seconds, and deals X amount of damage every 2 seconds. It does create a corpse on death. Next ability we have is Blockade of Fire. This does X amount of damage every second for 8 seconds. It also can burning enemies take 20% more damage from this ability. And then the last ability we have is called Detonating Siphon. Now we use this because of our exploding skeleton. When he runs out and does damage, he'll explode and die. And then when you get to the back bar, you apply this, and the corpse will deal more damage over X amount of disease damage over 12 seconds to all enemies around the corpse and between you and the corpse. If you siphon to the last duration, it causes the corpse to explode, dealing X amount of disease damage to all enemies around the corpse. While slotted, your damage done is increased by 3%. That's all damage, magic and stamina. Moving on to the next ability, and this is an optional ability, Elemental Drain. What this does is it applies Major Breach. This does reduce the spell resistance by 50 to 280. Remember, we use both the Night Mother's Gaze and this when we're not using the Unnerving Boneyard. And this also applies Magicka Steel to the enemy for 24 seconds, giving you 300 Magicka every second when damaging them. Now, if you're not in a group that doesn't have this, or you're in a group that has this, another option you can go with, which is one I like to use, is in the Mages Guild, and it is called Scalding Ruin. This is basically, you throw out a trap, it does X amount of damage over to the enemy when they activate it, and then it does X amount of damage every second for 11.6 seconds. So it does it can do a lot of damage over time. And it's really nice, especially in a rotation. And we're going to go ahead and put that here for now, because we don't need the Magicka Steel. The next ability we have is another like support type ability, but basically you summon these skeletal claws out of the ground, and they apply minor maim to the enemy for 5 seconds, and it also snares them for 50% of their movement speed, and then hitting you or an ally grants them empower for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your next light attack by 40%. Hitting a skeletal mage or a skeletal mender enhances them by 5 seconds, increasing their damage or their effectiveness by 40%. The next ability we have is Ravenous Goliath. Now, you can choose to use this if you want, or you can use the Animate Dead, or you can use this ultimate, or the Staff ultimate. Any of them is fine. But this does turns you into a Bone Goliath, or a Ravenous Goliath, that gives you 30,000 extra health for 20 seconds, and immediately restores 30,000 health. While transformed, your light attacks deal X amount of damage, and your heavy attacks deal X amount of damage, but you also, any damage you deal, or you deal X amount of damage as well, around you in an AoE, and it heals you for that amount. So, alright, now that I've shown you the skills, we're going to go over the CP. Starting with the red tree. We have 56 in Ironclad, reducing your damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. 18 in Dispel Shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1729. We have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 20 into Light Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1900 for wearing 5 or more pieces of light armor. 43 into Hardy, reducing damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And then moving on to the final red tree, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Warlord, reducing your break free cost by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 75 into Mooncalf, increasing your stamina recovery by 14%. And 43 into Arcanus, increasing your mag recovery by 10%. Over into the last tree here, we have 40 into Tumbling, increasing your, or reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%. 40 into Shadow Orb, reducing your block cost by 16%. The final blue tree is Hybridized. So we have 43 into Blessed, increasing healing done by 10%. 23 into Elfborn, increasing critical damage, critical healing, and magic abilities by 10%. We do get an extra 10% here because we are a Khajiit. Then we have 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Moving into the middle tree here, we have 19 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attacks with your two-handed, one-handed and shield, dual-wield bow weapons, and werewolf form by 12%. And then 19 into Staff Expert, increasing your light and heavy attacks with your Destruction Staves and Restoration Staves by 12%. And then 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. We also unlock Retaliation, Reposit, and Butcher. Okay, final tree. 43 into Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage done by 10%. 20 into Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage, critical healing, and stamina abilities by 9%. And then Thaumaturge, 20 points, which increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. Alright, now that you guys have seen that, I'm going to do 2 quick parts. One on the little skeleton, one on the big skeleton. The little skeleton is to represent your damage in a dungeon, in just a group. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to hit them with the minor maim first. I should be able to get about 20k out of this. Should. Doesn't mean I will, guys. Alright, we got about 14k. Normally I can pull 20k when I can get a good rotation in on this thing. So, just to show you though, we get 3,000 weapon damage with 58% weapon critical, 69% critical damage. And that's with using a power pot plus a 8,156 physical pin. And then on the Magicka side, we get 2,491 spell damage with 39% spell critical, 70% critical damage, and 13,000 spell penetration. If you look here, though, our Blockade of Fire wasn't doing too bad. Our Rapid Strikes was doing a little bit better. These were doing pretty good. The Blast Bones, the Detonating Siphon, that kind of stuff. But let's go ahead and see what this thing looks like on the big skeleton over here. Now, you got to remember, we're also missing some damage from our Thorvikin set, because whenever we take damage, we will summon basically an acidic pool around us, so... I can usually get about 30k out of this. Oh, I screwed up there. Thriving kills. Oh, I missed it again. I'm just gonna do something real quick, guys. So I can get this going. There we go. I knew there was something else missing. Yeah, but I can usually get about 30k DPS with this guy. I'm just not very good with the rotation, to be honest, and keeping everything managed and all that stuff. If you can do the rotation good enough, though, yeah, you can easily pull 30k DPS with this guy. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this into a dungeon. We're going to mess around with it in solo play, and I don't really need to do much here besides change a few abilities. So we're going to grab our Summoner's Armor. We're going to put it right here, and then what we're going to do is on the front bar, we're going to grab our Armor, Light Armor passive, and we're going to grab our Harness Magicka. We're just going to put this here. Because we have all these other things, we are going to change this out too with our Destruction of the Staff passive Elemental Drain. And we're going to go ahead and head over to the Depths of Malatar dungeon so I can show you guys how effective this thing can be in a solo play scenario, but also in a dungeon environment. Alright, now what we're going to do is just run in here and run through our rotation, like I said. So, well, not run through our rotation, but run through this up until the first boss encounter. And there's that. Now we're going to go ahead and buff up again. Get ready for this next encounter. I am going to do this real quick. Oh, that sucked. And before I go crazy, because this thing will drive me nuts, you guys know that. Why they can't show you with the correct weapons on is beyond me, but... Hey guys, you guys know what's coming next. I'm gonna go ahead and let him puke on me and kill me. But this way you guys can just see how effective it can really be. And it is actually pretty nice build. It's a lot of fun to play. It's a different type of build, but I really do like it. So, but moving back to the Way Shrine and then going ahead and closing out this video, I hope that you guys like it. This is the Defiled Warlock, and for the person who is looking for something like this, here you go. This is what I can come up with. I hope you do like it and enjoy it. It's, like I said, it's a lot of fun because you can take advantage of a lot of different sets and their combinations along with your own class setup. So it's really an interesting thing to do. But that's pretty much it for the video, guys. That means you know what's coming next. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, please subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.